Glass has improved or modified the appearance of the buildings that we live in and work in beyond all recognition from, say, medieval periods. We now have shop windows with huge areas of perfectly clear glass which allow the customer browsing to look and see the contents of the shop inside. Glass was probably first introduced into Scotland by the Romans. The glass that would have been used in the cathedrals and abbeys from the 12th century onward were generally very, very small panes, but they would be mounted in lead cames.
The raw materials for making glass are readily available in Scotland, and though the recipe may have changed slightly over time, the main ingredients remain silica, in the form of sand, a fluxing alkali to purify, and a stabiliser.
As far as secular buildings are concerned, it would appear mid to late 15th century is probably the earliest that glass appears. The windows at that period would be what we call fixed glazing. In other words, you couldn't open the window. So if you wanted to let any air in, the window would be made in two parts. The top part would be fixed glazing in the old method with leaded glass. The bottom part would be two opening wooden shutters. A major change in the types of windows occurred in Scotland from about 1680 onwards with the introduction of case windows. These were wooden frames in which the glass was mounted, and the great difference was that these wooden frames could be opened. Very, very shortly after that was the introduction of the sash window, often combined with a case window. The sash was a movable wooden panel which could slide up and down.
Before the 19th century, glass was made in two broadly similar ways. First, there was crown glass, which was blown and spun into sometimes very large discs before being finished in open air. Inferior broad glass was formed as a cylinder, which was then cut and flattened. Both techniques had their limitations, and this would determine the size of each pane.
Both case and sash windows were subdivided into smaller panes by the use of astragals, which are wooden partitions between the panes. The major reason for this is at that period, late 17th, early 18th century, we were still restricted to a fairly small pane size.
The presence of iron oxide in early glass would prove to be a barrier to high-quality glass production. It would be many years before glassmakers could devise a way of eliminating its small gas bubbles and telltale green tinge.
By the middle of the 19th century, the quality of glass had improved to such an extent that it was now possible for people looking out through the windows to see the world without the distortion that had gone before. From about the 1950s, perhaps an important development at that time was Pilkington's invention of float glass, which was a continuous process producing a sheet window glass in reasonably large sizes at a fairly economic price. Therefore, residents could then use much larger panes of glass, replacing the old multi-paned sash windows. Still mounted in sashes, but quite often only a single pane. And these tended to be described as picture windows when this particular author was a boy.